for another episode of Signals and Symptoms podcast. We have an amazing guest appearance today. We're going to talk about it, but let's first jump directly into last week's updates as we go along and share those things with you over time. This has been an interesting week, and we're going to go ahead and start with Epic, that they're saying that they're going to unveil major AI solutions. We're going to talk about this as a whole impact, and some of this, of course, we're going to touch base because and get the opinion of our guest speaker, Victoria, Dr. Mannix, about what it means for VCs and everything. A few important publications came out, streamlining organ donation, impact of artificial intelligence. They actually did say this, and this is what we have been talking about. I don't know if you reviewed the last three episodes. This was, first of all, major impact of AI on low and middle income countries, and more importantly, that they say that data verification added and unanticipated procedure delays. And that's what we keep hounding on, and that's where Harvey is the king of it, that he says that it is more important how you implement it than just develop it. So these are one of those things that you guys should review. Another fantastic article, Systemic Cost Effectiveness and Budget Analysis of Artificial Intelligence in Healthcare. I just delivered a lecture on hype versus value, and then it is extremely important to understand value, and not just the hype. And this is the whole point about this, to make sure that everyone understands this. Alzheimer's is the disease of the mind that we have been looking at. And then this is a fantastic study that they did longitudinal clinical analysis. And that's extremely important and a slightly harder problem to solve as far as large language models are concerned. I mean, we do that from a longitudinal analysis, and we are moving towards more and more what we call longitudinal analysis. Definitely worth a read, important to understand. The Echo Mamba was released. This is a Mamba-based model, which is very different than what we call transformer-based. It's a completely different sort of architecture. And then, as you know, that we actually do look at different technologies to understand their impact. And you're going to see that this is going to become more and more pervasive, in especially not just image-based analysis, when you have video-based analysis. So the architecture lends itself a little better. So those who are technically inclined would go ahead and do that. So in the preparation of today's, thing, let me first introduce our gracious host. Dr. Mannix is essentially an oncologist and then is now an equity capital partner. I would let her introduce herself, and the idea is, again, how to bring value. And then we have great Ed Marks, who's going to tell you about the CIO experience. Harvey is a Swiss Army knife, and I'm going to tell you my founder experience and how do we solve real world problems that bring value. Go ahead, Victoria, please.
Well, thank you for inviting me to join this morning. This is excellent opportunity. Happy to be here. So again, my name is Victoria Mannix. I'm actually a partner at Acuity Capital. We are a growth healthcare fund that invests in health tech, med tech, and biotech services. But you just jumped off a little bit on my background. You're correct. I'm a medical oncologist. I've been in the healthcare space, gosh, for too many decades that I actually want to acknowledge. About 30 years, but around 20 of those have been spent in biotech and in pharma. But I joined I joined a healthcare fund with three other amazing partners, and we've been investing in healthcare for the better part of 10 years together. But we're seeing a lot of changes, so I'm looking forward to talking a little bit about how AI is impacting some of those strategic investments in healthcare today.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. We're going to go ahead and show you some of these things. Actually, for some reason, it is not giving me the complete window. I apologize for technical difficulties.
Yeah,
There you
that's
go.
that's the AI gods, man, attacking us.
We just have some fun over here. So I just want to paint a little bit of big picture so that the context is saved. By the way, I loved a lot about learned about context engineering with Harvey in my discussion. We'll bring that into one of these discussions, and then I love anyone who loves Star Trek. You should look at the episode called "Context is for Kings." You're gonna love it. Anyways, first, the big AI picture. I mean, we are in Dallas, Stargate is incoming to Texas, billions of dollars of investment. And then as you can see, more and more companies are raising significant amount of money in general, artificial intelligence, Mistral, Raphael AI, RAM, etc. As a matter of fact, Anthropic, 170 billion valuation. It's insane the amount of money is pouring into essentially an AI. The second big shift that we have noticed from a data is concerned is that healthcare AI rakes nearly 4 billion in VC funding. So basically, if you look at the digital healthcare space in terms of funding is concerned, AI takes the majority of share. And then if you look at the overall funding over the past quarters is concerned, you're going to see that it every day you, of course, every time you see a dip in the last quarter, that's not unusual, but it's a slightly uptick now. And then lastly, I want to put it in out of this system over here to set up the stage for today's discussion is that we have a new bill, the big bill, and that big bill is going to overall cut funding for Medicare over the next 10 years about $1 trillion. And then what does it all mean? And then go from there. So the floor is open. I'm going to start with Harvey, and then he's going to cue in Victoria.
Well, as a serial entrepreneur, if I don't have money, I can't make my reality happen. As a physician that we are here and healthcare professionals, we know that I know in our heart is for that patient. And so it crushes me to have an idea and say, oh my gosh, I can't fund this. Obviously, there are many steps. It takes a lot of courage sometimes to take that idea to a product and then actually to execute. And so when I met Victoria, I was really excited because I'm also going to say she invited me to be one of the speakers. I'm not sure if it's a keynote speaker, but either way, it's at her VC fund in Morocco. So I'm really excited to be part of that because here's a chance of giving my idea of what I see the future like. And regardless if it's for me or for someone else, it's just the concept. And then to be in a room full of people that can actually fund those ideas. Again, either for me or for someone else, I don't care because in my mind, I just want to get that idea funded out there. So with that, Victoria, what are some kind of things or tips that you think, oh my gosh, Harvey, I want people out there to know X, Y, Z because this is important to make sure that that core framework is there so that when they get to that level for you, that they can execute better.
Yeah. So, in terms of AI right now in healthcare, it's very interesting. I'm not sure if you're familiar kind of with a little bit of the numbers that have actually gone in. About last year, around 11 billion was actually invested in healthcare AI, and it's about $1 in $4. I mean, that tells you a lot. Um, and now by 2028, we're looking at what we expect to be over $75 billion being invested when it comes into the healthcare AI space. And a lot of that is because we've got a healthcare system that is extremely overburdened. I mean, the US healthcare spending rate right now, the US GDP is expected to top about $6 trillion by, when, 2028. And what does that tell you? That tells you a lot. And I think this is why we're seeing the big bill coming about. But individuals are living longer. We've got many more 65 plus year old people. And, we have an aging and costly patient population, but patients are living longer. And we've got to figure out ways where we can bring these patients out of a hospital type system, bring them to home so we're not taxing the shortage that we have on physicians and nurses and whatnot. And I think this is where AI really comes into play because you're able to look at accelerating all types of services. That could be diagnostic services, it could be billing services. And I think this is a really important aspect because if we are able to, what I call, untax a lot of what we see on a daily basis, going to your GP or trying to figure out how we even get appointments as patients, then I think we're going to accelerate and start to see more advances in what I would consider healthcare today.
And we remain to be apolitical, but at the end of the day, government policies do impact a lot. We are looking at from a Saudi Qatari perspective, since we are, adding more sites. Healthcare is a prime sort of objective from a government policy perspective. But the systems, healthcare systems, are very different globally. And in
Sure.
US, we are looking at this as a ex-CIO, an amazing person who loves patient care. What do you think that the impact will be, and how would you, if you put your investor hat on, or your vendor, I don't know how, I mean, you have so many hats. So whatever hat you want to put on, just tell, what do you think I should think of in terms of, moving this forward?
Yeah, well, I love the fact that so much attention and so much investment is being put into technology because, as we already have stated, not much has moved while other industries have moved, 10x faster than healthcare. We've moved a little bit slower, and there's many reasons for that. We've talked about those before, but the fact that all this investment now is coming in and we're really exploiting what AI can do to really disrupt and get us to the next level, not just in efficiencies and reducing our costs, but also the most important thing, right, is quicker diagnosis and better care and better quality. So super thrilled about it, for sure. And so just providing another point of view, all that said, is like who's buying. So will health systems, so I can only speak to health systems in the West specifically, but who is buying, who will buy these products, right? So I do sit on the board of a couple of health systems, and I get to see a little bit underneath the covers a bit here and there, and I always wonder who's going to be the buyer, who's going to go out there and take a risk, right? So health systems, hospitals are conservative by nature, fiscally conservative. They don't have a lot of extra money, so how are they going to go through this process of making these sorts of investments? We've spoken about this, in previous episodes, so if people want to go back, you can look at those and listen to some of the insights that were shared. So that's always my concern, is like, are our health systems, our hospital leaders ready to embrace and ready to make the investment, ready to buy these great products that are out there? Are we ready? And are we going to be able to buy? One quick, sort of way of framing this and thinking about this is many organizations, if you take the budget, ideally, you might break up your budget into three. You kind of have your run budget, like what does it cost? And I'm just going to speak from technology, but it could be the entire hospital health system. What's it cost to run the health system? And then what does it cost to sort of advance the health system? People use different words for these things, but I'm just keeping it really simple. Run, sort of advance, and then the third bucket would be innovate. So ideally, in a healthy company, you might get run down to 50%, and then you could do 30% to advance, 20% to innovate. The problem is many hospitals are 100% run. Mm-hmm. So we have these great great companies, super innovation, and an inability to make that investment. So that's frustrating, for sure. And I think that's part of the challenge. So it's great. Again, I love all the investments being made. I'm a huge believer. It's like I want to try to help these hospitals pull down that run rate. Leverage AI, right? That's the conundrum. You could actually make these investments, leverage AI, take down that run rate so you could invest more into innovation. And so that's the hard part. That's always the tricky balance. So that's my point of view, is I love the investments, and I just encourage all of my peers that are in hospitals and health systems and sit on boards to carve out the money to make these investments, because all of them align with the quadruple, triple aim. All of these investments will align because they're going to improve the experience of our clinicians and patients. They're going to reduce costs. They're going to improve quality and safety. I mean, it's a no-brainer to me to make these investments, but the conundrum, again, and I'll stop with just repeating it, is that they don't have a lot of margin to make the investment.
Yeah, we'll say
I
that.
think,
Go ahead, Victoria.
yeah, very, very, very well said. And I think you brought up a good point. You've got your hospitals and your healthcare systems, and then also a lot of the buyers that we're seeing for this AI technology is a lot of the pharmaceutical companies, when you look at, groups like Pfizer, Sanofi, Eli Lilly, because we're seeing a lot of AI going into accelerating drug discovery and a lot of the biotech services associated with clinical trials. I'm not sure if you're aware, it takes over $2 billion today to develop a drug. And that's approximately about 12 years. And if you look at AI being brought in to not only figure out what are the drugs that perhaps could actually reach those phase 1 studies earlier that have targets that are more applicable to the diseases that we're seeing accelerated today, that's an excellent area. But while these clinical trials are being run, that's what's the majority of time, how you could better predict survival. Can we use AI for modeling for that based on the algorithms that we're seeing from the output of these studies on a month-to-month basis? Maybe we could shave off at least 2 to 3 years. So we're seeing a lot of that happening, and I think it's an area where I know at Acuity Capital, are very well vested, because again, this is what brings these therapies, and it also further accelerates another level of healthcare globally.
No, Victoria, I love that, and you're right. I'm speaking just from, sort of the provider side, and so it's awesome that that's happening. And at the same time, as you share that, I'm thinking, oh my gosh, the providers are going to fall further and further behind, because it's the same on the payer side. Payers are making these investments, and as we all know, there's a little war going on, right, between payers and providers, and I call it the AI wars. And yeah, other parts of healthcare, such as the ones that you mentioned, are making those investments. Provider side, if we don't make those same investments, we're going to find ourselves even further behind. And sometimes, from a competitive point of view, it's not going to be a positive impact. So I'm thrilled, and that's why it's great to have you as a guest to kind of share what's going on in the biotech and the pharma side, because they're making great progress with the leverage of AI.
And I want to jump in a couple quick comments real fast. On Victoria's point on the medication, there's some AI companies that have claimed that they're able to drop that $2 billion to $200 million and down to 10%. From an AI point of view, I have to say this: if that happens and it continues that path, then guess what? We are getting closer and closer to personalized medicine for all of us here. Because if we bring that cost down, we're going to start addressing diseases that are rare, things that are personal for just you, and now we have that price down to a point that we can actually do that. Second thing I want to say is Victoria mentioned about the cost, and so did you, Ed and Janan, about the cost of healthcare getting higher and higher because of our aging population. I am blessed that I'm an advisor for the country of Singapore, and they're spending a lot of money because their longevity is getting longer and longer, and their workforce is getting less and less. And so just to throw it in there, just for context for people listening, they really are looking at leveraging AI. And then I'm personally biased. I really think we will be using robots, leveraging AI for those systems to be able to meet supply demand. And anyway, with that, Khalid, what were you going to say? Khalid.
So I'm just going to summarize. Edward's point is very important, that you have to spend money to make money, which basically comes from. And then I completely agree that organizations need to budget it out. Number 2 point is that it is not just about the long tail, in my opinion, as you suggest, that there would be a massive decrease in overall spend, that is from a drug development perspective, but just very word that you use, prediction, Victoria used, is extremely important, that as fast prediction you can do, you can allocate resources appropriately. And at the end of the day, that is the whole game in saving money, is basically allocation of resources appropriately and utilizing your talent to the maximum. Very simply, from an AI scribe to all the way for what we have developing in terms of oncology, and right now is a patient portal. And then lastly, it's not just about personalized medicine. Believe it or not, it's literally, for the first step is access and summarization. It's not that hard, for God's sakes. And I agree with all of these, which gives me, of course, 2 different clear ideas. If you are looking to pick up your startup, work on, if you're a digital startup, prediction. And number 2, of course, Tempus AI actually bought Path AI. We can talk about it at some point in time, that how pathology is going to be an important part and parcel for cancer diagnosis, and we move forward. Now, globally, we talked about it, but in terms of US, anyone can take that question. This shift of there's one thing that we need to make the dollar go less. We have to decrease the number of dollars in general, but we are definitely getting a decrease from the government itself. And then AI is part and parcel of extending that dollar. So give us examples. Like what, let's say all three of you are investors, and then you're saying that this is what I want, Junaid, from, that this piece is a problem. I want to invest in this piece because it's going to X, Y. And me and Ed has been teaching me the difference between hard ROI and soft ROI. So Victoria, the hard ROI we call, okay, exact, this number is going to be reimbursable, blah, blah, blah. But soft ROI is decrease iteration, increase, job satisfaction, etc. And talk about both of them when you're addressing that answer. So go ahead, Harvey, you start. I'm sorry, I'm biased to Harvey because he's a good, we need out. I'm just kidding.
Actually, I'm gonna mix it up this time, and I'm gonna start with Ed. Let's start with Ed, because I think I know you're gonna bring a lot of stuff that will make Victoria and I add to it.
Well, I'll stick to something that's not as exciting because the three of you physicians can speak more on some of the quality things and safety things. But the basic things, because I always focus first on cost. Now, don't get me wrong, it's all about patient care and the clinician experience for sure. But because of the reasons I already talked about, where there's no money, is how do we create money? So to me, there's obvious use cases that exist today, but again, people are so slow in pulling the trigger. I don't understand it. I do understand it. And again, we've talked about this before. It's just the complexity of decision makings in hospitals and all of the dysfunction in many hospitals. But one area is supply chain, right? Your biggest cost is typically human costs, right? Up to typically around 50% is salaries and benefits. The next big chunk, normally about 30 some percent, is supply chain. And this could be drug costs, which we've been talking about. But just think of basic supplies, orange juice, trays, bed trays, all the different supplies, over 30%. Now you think these are multi-billion-dollar organizations, right? So if 35% of your spend is going towards supplies, that's a great area to disrupt. And they exist. There are startups that do this. I've seen them. I know some of them. So they can come in and immediately, and I've seen examples up to 30%, but I don't know that they could do that in every single category, but for sure 10% across the board. So the investment pays for itself immediately, creates margin, then you can shift those dollars towards doing the great things for patient care and quality and safety. That sometimes has me, want to wrap my head in duct tape a little bit and just pound it against the wall. It's like, why aren't we all doing these? Why aren't we embracing things? And I know, and I can't go too much in depth here because I have covenants and I'm not going to say anything negative against health systems that I'm part of or know and things like that. But just be assured, this comes from personal experience. Sometimes health systems are so dysfunctional, they can't make these decisions very quickly. So even though you could come up with a rational product, like I said, you can come in, take out 10%. Well, guess what? Well, I might already have a relationship with a giant company that provides all my supplies. And you may be in long-term fixed contracts, and it might be hard, or you have relationships, so it's hard to get out of that relationship. That's one thing. Another one is there's a lot of people that take pride in what they do, and they should, right? I've been in charge of supply chain for 10 years, and look how great our supply chain is and all the efficiencies we made. They're very protective. If someone were to come in and say, hey, I can immediately take out 10%, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, depending on the size of the organization, but for the many of them, it's hundreds of millions of dollars, almost immediately, like within 30 days. Well, what does that say about me and my leadership? If I've been in charge for 10 years and someone comes in with this, software and immediately saves another 10%. So you're dealing with human factors, you're dealing with pride, you're dealing with long-term relationships, you're dealing with all these different things. And that's one of the main reasons we're not making these investment decisions, these bold decisions that could reduce costs, enable, like I talked about at the beginning, more funding for innovation and transformation and doing the great things that we all know are possible on the quality side. So that's sort of my take on it. So the example I gave was supply chain. Easy example, easy ROI, hard ROI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll jump in and say two things. At one point, I started a company in healthcare, grew it to about 400 employees. And to your point, Ed, a lot of my money was going just to run the thing. And so if now that I have AI and I wanted to do it, I would have a gap. And how do I address that gap? How do I do what you're saying? To me, it would be having someone like Victoria or someone to say, hey, I need a loan here. Give me a loan. I'll be able to pay it back because I know my efficiency is going to get better, and then therefore my gaps gets bigger, and then with that gap I can pay you back, and I need that little bridge to get me to that point because I know this is there. The second problem that I'm hearing, and I know this is an issue, and I tell startups this: we need to make sure we focus on the culture. Because I can have this amazing widget, and to Ed's point, I come into the organization and be like, whoa, 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 that's going to replace me. Hell no, I don't want that. And so what I tell startups is start with the Ford. Do not present the limousine. Start with something basic that everyone's not going to argue, that it's going to help the patient, help the facility, and culturally it will be accepted. That way you're in there. And my other part is whenever there's an argument with your spouse, with a business partner, whoever it is, I really think that it boils down to education. So educate them on AI, the efficiencies, and when you put it together, now they see it, and now they're not going to argue. So that's my 2 cents. Victoria, what do you think?
I love these I love these viewpoints. It's all great. I mean, from an investor perspective, right now ROI, every investor wants immediate ROI. That's the big thing. But I think in a world where strategic communication and what I would call interdisciplinary leadership are key in healthcare, the hard ROI gets the deal signed, but the soft ROI keeps the systems running. So, from an investor perspective, I would have to say it really comes down to balance. The most successful AI deployments in healthcare are going to be those that would balance both, aligning what I would call financial outcomes with really human-centered decision.
Beautiful, beautifully said. Just to summarize, Ed Marks, 50% human, 35% supply chain, 50%, 15% is the rest. So when you're looking at your next startup, even doing your due diligence, you need to understand where to put that in which bucket. As Harvey suggested, it's extremely important to start with a minimal viable product, acceptable, move forward. And as Victoria suggested that, which is really odd, by the way, and I'm going to push back a little bit on this, is that healthcare ROI is hard. It's just not like, but just to be honest with you, I can develop another app and start selling it for $20 a month and it will do well. I'm just not joking. I mean, but the problem really is that to get a contract signed, the average length of is somewhere between 9 to 18 months. And these are like, honestly, not that huge clinics. I mean, we have one with 100 providers, another one with 400 providers. The average spend, and I was VP of V1 in the past. How do, when you're doing your due diligence, supposedly, how do you factor that in? Because the best part about healthcare and the beauty of healthcare is that it's so resilient. I mean, once you are on the preferred vendor list, you're gold, right? Let's just be honest. I mean, Ed is gonna say he's the CIO CTO. Ask him. I'm assuming. I mean, for Ed, but at least my CIO CTOs call me. Junaid, I need a solution for that. Do you have one? I don't. I don't know anyone. So what I'm saying is that the resiliency part is so beautiful. However, the impatience is sort of different as we see. And that also, because as a founder, and this is something that I'm going to say, as a founder, the problem is that I know exactly, right? I know X people, they're getting it, they're testing it, and they're piloting it, and all of that. What do you see, and what do you think in terms of investment? Because it is a slightly longer pay cycle as compared to other industries.
So that's a great question, and I'll give you an answer from my perspective of where I invest with Acuity Capital. So we are growth investors, and it really all comes down to how do you define growth, and that sets the precedence for your due diligence. So in our capacity, we are looking at companies where we de-risk regulatory, we de-risk R&D. So we're really looking at the ARR and what that ARR looks like year over year. From a due diligence perspective, we have, gosh, over 27 what we would call inclusion exclusion criteria to really look at where that commercial risk lies. Meaning, so you might be able to sell an app for say $20 every time somebody buys it, but what's the sustainability of that app year over year? So are you going to see a 20 to 30% ARR, and how long is that going to last until you break even? And I think that's important. But when it comes to investing, that definition of growth, or where individuals like to invest, that definition is different for everybody. And so you have to define it up front. And I think that's an important part for a lot of these companies where they're coming in. Just as we choose companies, companies also have to choose us. And I think that's important. Are you the right fit? Are you the right individuals? Because you see the sales cycle, is an 18-month sales cycle fit where your investment criteria necessarily is? These are the questions that we ask on a daily basis. One of my partners, Mark Goldstone, who has literally, launched and overseen 10 of the biggest selling products of all time in healthcare historically. He can look at these commercial plans and tell you immediately, are you going to get sustainable growth to a break-even point to be successful? And are we going to get the return on our investments within, a 7-year time period? And I think those are the biggest challenges today. But from a due diligence perspective, it comes down to not only how you define it, what the sales cycle looks like. Is it going to be a global investment? Is it going to be a regional investment? Where is this going to return? Where is it going to make the impact? Is it applicable to a broad groups? So are all health systems going to be able to do this? Is it going to be a regional application? I mean, there are so many different criteria that we look at. And it's kind of funny. Sometimes you'll see companies that'll approach and, they'll maybe do 2 to 3 pitches and they're like, are you going to invest? There's so much more involved in it. And I'd say it's very much like drug development. People don't realize the amount of time and energy and the teams that go into it in order to do these investments today, when it's such a tough area to raise money. We really take a significant amount of time understanding what that sales cycle will look like, and that commercial plan will look like for a company over time.
Yeah, and I want to add also, since we were talking AI, I would imagine one of the kind of scary struggles is these APIs and the technology growing so fast that if I'm building today, maybe ChatGPT 5 or 6 or 7 next year will trump what I was making. And you, Janae, with an API now can compete with me for pennies or micro pennies. And so on both sides of the equation, it gets really scary because yes, it helps, but then now it's crushing someone else. So then as an investor, you got to invest in just the right way so that your investment isn't also crushed, so that you can continue investing for other companies. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
Harvey, we have talking about this. It's all in confidence, so we don't want to leak information to equity capital. I'm just kidding. So yeah, I mean, what Harvey is really pointing towards is the Save Life AI's philosophy of build, which is basically agentic, multimodal, and small large language models as compared to large. Again, we wanted to basically make sure that it is essentially applicable. So we want to bring it down to the level of edge devices. Again, cybersecurity is a very keen problem. But first of all, just want to summarize this for the audience. Number one, if you are approaching any of the VC funds, they actually do have an investment philosophy. they do define themselves if this is growth or ungrowth or whatever. They have actually done that. Lastly, they actually have the specific criteria that they walk through you. And then lastly, then the most important part that they focus on is the complete sales cycle. So these are the things that you need to understand as a founder, as an future investor in the actual capital partners as well. That let's say you become a LP for equity capital, you need to understand their philosophy that meets, and that is the key point of it is a matching game. It is not exactly anyone's. I cannot do anything without the money, and they cannot make any money without me building products. So it is not. It is as a relationship. It is a matching protocol that we go through. And that's where, Ed Marks, I wanted to talk to you about. Like, there are systems. Mayo Clinic is one of them. They have a whole VC arm. Advocate Aurora has, $50 million fund, etc. But where do you see this thing that rather this framework is so beautiful? I'm just going to let you know, coming from Pakistan originally, and India, Gujarat, and all of that. This beautiful ecosystem that drives innovation in this country. How can healthcare systems be partnering with like equity capital or whatever the framework would be? I have no idea. You probably can educate me. But what I'm saying is how they can plug into that ecosystem.
Yeah, to your point, there are a few, but when you look at it by percentage, it's very few. But yeah, of course, there's some monolithic healthcare organizations that have the funding to create their own funding, right? They've got chief investment officers. They've got that. Some of these chief investment officers have teams that are in the hundreds. They're creating funds that they're making investments in. Some hospitals that are a little bit smaller, I think through the American Hospital Association, have come together. I recall there's like 12 to 15 of them, sort of like mid-market hospitals. They've come together and formed a fund together. So there's definitely action being taken. But when you do it by percentage, it's just not enough. And even when those organizations have investment arms, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're bringing those companies inside to their own hospitals. So do you see what I'm saying? Sometimes it's a pure investment play, not necessarily becoming a customer. Now, ideally, the way that some of them are set up, and I've worked in such an ecosystem, and it was great, where we invested, and if it made sense, we definitely took on that particular company. So that was great. The other example is sometimes those innovations happen within those companies, and the larger hospitals and health systems, the more sophisticated ones, have a capability of monetizing that, right? So a physician like yourselves, comes up with a great idea, and then we make the investments ourselves, develop it. That happens as well. So it's not like things aren't happening. So I was definitely speaking generically, but to your question specifically, I think the best way is everyone should, as part of their job, be thinking about transformation. It should be incentivized in their plans, your annual review and things like that. And we should be making partnerships, and we could start with low risk, right? We don't have to, take $1 billion that we don't have and do this high risk thing. We can start with so many of the startups that are in the ecosystem and do something low risk and partner. And I think that's the point we've made throughout our, throughout Signal and Symptoms and all of our talks, is like, how do you partner with someone? Find someone that can do something that, again, start low risk, because we're so risk adverse, and partner. And you can do shared incentives. You already spoke about those. So how do we get shared incentives? Harvey mentioned, hey, maybe if it's a bigger play and we don't have the money and we know we're going to get ROI, can we write something contractually where we can implement the system? Let's just take a supply chain as an example again. Maybe we don't have the money to spend $1 million in getting this system in and implement it, but that supply chain company believes in themselves so much that they're willing to finance it, essentially. So for no money, we can dive deep, get that ROI, pay that back. So that's another way. Another way is take an equity position, and I've done this previously as well. So I've been on both sides. I've been on the side where we developed a product, and when we went to market, right, there was a lot of reluctancy for hospitals, again, for all the reasons we cited, to partner with us, even though we had this great product that could do amazing things. And so we gave up equity positions just to get foot in the door. So that's another thing you could do, is say, hey, look, we're willing to give up 10% of our company and we'll give equity, you know, a percent. We'll give a point to you for being an early adopter. And that was a way, and we did that with a few health systems. And for those health systems, it was another way to diversify their revenue, right? Because they were just beholden to whatever government payment they might have, which we know is very volatile and you can't bank on it. But if we make a partnership, we do good because we're making these investments with AI and we're saving more lives and decreasing costs. And at the same time, we own part of that company. And as that company continues to flourish, we get revenue, passive revenue. So there's all sorts of models. And to your point, Junaid, you know, which I don't want to lose, because what you said was really important and it wasn't the main part of our discussion, but super important. You got to become that sort of trusted advisor that I call all the time. And that's what you were referring to. And I did that all the time, where I don't know if Junaid can do X, Y, Z, but man, I'm in a pinch. Hey, can you help me out? And if Junaid doesn't know, he's going to know Harvey. He's going to know Victoria, who's like, you know, making investments in 100 other companies. So that's what you want to become, is that trusted advisor, because you'll become that go-to person. I can name to you the 4 or 5 people that have been so instrumental in my career that I picked up the phone all the time. I just was with one of them last week and I was just thanking him. I was like, man, do you remember 20 years ago and 10 years ago and 5 years ago how you saved me? And of course, he's thinking to himself, well, I wasn't really concerned about saving Ed. I just wanted to get the revenue, you know, because he was getting business. But anyways, those are really important relationships. And if you could build that trusted partnership like we're talking about, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I want to jump in and give you a quick story. My favorite phrase of the year is, we don't know what we don't know. With that said, if we don't know how to leverage these tools, and we don't know what to do with these tools, we're not going to be able to implement them into our health ecosystem because we don't know. A crazy story. Thursday night, I did my first red eye coming from San Francisco to Dallas. I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to sleep. The guy next to me, he's the vice president of a major company. He's like, man, I just got out of a 24-hour AI meeting. We're freaking out. Our healthcare company, we think it's going to be crushed by AI. He's like, gosh, I need help. And I'm like looking at him, I'm like, well, by the way, I'm an ER doctor. I know AI. I know entrepreneurship. What's your problem? Let me sit down with you. And he's like, well, I need X, Y, Z. And I said, give me a minute. I did a deep research, created some information. I'm like, here you go. Here's your solution to your problem. And he's like looking at me like, what? And I'm like, it's because I understand healthcare. It's because I know AI, because I know business, and I can sit down with you and do it. I'm not self-promoting in any way. I'm just giving us an example that you guys need experts to be able to make that phone call and be like, hey, XYZ is going on. What do I need to do? And have a team like this that's on your watching right now to be able to say, hey, this is how you can define this. This is how, again, to my point, you know what you don't know. So for us to come in and say, hey, this is the way.
Yeah. I love these points that you've brought up, Harvey, and Ed, you're right when it comes to partnerships. I think another important point that people don't necessarily realize when you're working with different venture groups and you're working with private equity, whoever it is that you're working with, it's such a strong partnership that when you're choosing these individuals that you want to work with, you have to understand that it's going to be the partnership where you can come and ask these types of questions. Exactly to your story, Harvey. So many of these companies, they don't know who they're going to be working with strategics. It's not even who's going to buy their products, but you even have to look, you know, in the long run, who's going to buy my company? And who, you know, what's going to be developed, what's in the market landscape, what's going to be developed that's going to come in and crush me. And people don't even realize these aspects from an investment perspective of what you actually have to do in terms of due diligence to ensure you don't get into those situations. You got to work with distributors. You've got to work with health systems. You got to work with, you know, pharma companies. You got to work with the government, insurance. I mean, there are so many different networks that you have to have knowledge of to be successful with these types of investments. And I think the partnership part is key. And it's not just, you know, you don't know what you don't know. It's who do you know? That can get you to that next point. And that's another huge part of it. It's who you know.
So important. In the age, so one of my favorite phrases, Harvey, is in the age of AI, human trust has gone from gold to platinum
Hmm.
because the noise is so much that the signal is less, but extremely important. And that's your network, is your net worth. And that is, again, superbly said, Victoria. Add to your point, um, that it is extremely important for actual financiers and innovations, investment offices, etc., to actually explore partnerships, and the good ones. Like for example, I'm going to start seed round in, let's say, January 2026. One of the things I'm looking for, as Victoria exactly suggested, that I'm looking for a partner that is very good at partnering. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? So that is the goal here, because I know that if I need to get to the next step, and which is the exit strategy for anything, right? I mean, of course, I mean, I'm going to get old. Oh, somebody has to take over and pass that mental out. We need to ensure that they are looking through the whole breadth and helping me through the process. It shouldn't be just my job. They should not just bring in money. They should bring in their network, and they should bring in their brain, which is, again, sometimes I don't, because again, I'm a neurocritical care, epilepsy, stroke, but yeah, I need a CFO. So that's beautifully done. And then lastly, again, summarizing Harvey's point, that it is so essential that when you're looking through this lens of investment, you're not just talking about investment. You are actually looking through the whole pipeline and then understanding where it actually makes a difference and creates value. Harvey, we already are up 46 minutes in. I have so many more questions to learn from you guys, but I'm gonna let you have the last question from our two gentlemen and then close.
Gosh, you're putting it tight on me. I need AI to ask a question here, but joking. Um, one real quick thing. I just want to know from both you guys if there was one take-home message for someone out there on the VC side and implementation. Is there one thing that you comes to mind that we haven't mentioned that you guys would like to share with everybody? Either Ed or Victoria can start.
That's a great question. There's so many things I can tell you. I could talk on this for I could talk on this for days. I would say, you know, when it comes to AI, one of the things to always remember from the investor perspective, where we talk about it, our investments are only as good as the data that goes into it. It's key. It's key. It's one of the things that we haven't really talked too much about this morning, but we spend a lot of time on that. And kind of understanding that is a critical piece that we look at from an investor perspective. But the one thing I think I will say in general, when it comes to AI in healthcare as an investor, at Acuity, we look at health tech, med tech, and biotech services. AI is what I would call the red thread that brings them all together. It looks at it's in everything we do today. I think that um, there isn't a healthcare system, there isn't a services company, there isn't a pharmaceutical company that doesn't look at us and go, "What are you doing in AI?" It's such an important piece. It's such a strong focus. We only see it getting stronger. Um, and to be honest, it's great to have individuals like yourselves where we can come sit and actually talk about it. So it comes down to, we don't know what we don't know, but we've got some great people that we know who can answer those questions for us.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
for me, I always fall back, and it's a common denominator answer that I typically give is Harvey said you don't know what you don't know, and for individuals who are listening, watching, and are responsible. So like if I'm talking to my peer set, chief digital officers or chief CIOs or whatever, you yourself need to jump deep into the AI. You cannot be like thinking you're in charge of AI and you're not AI enabled yourself. And this happens so much, and it's for me too. I mean, I was challenged a week ago. I was with some professor from university in Mexico, and he was talking, and he was like, I felt like he was looking right at me and challenging me. It's like, oh my gosh. But anyways, I always tell people, are you still using a garage door opener from 40 years ago? You know, like it's on your visor and you click it. You know, same with your thermostat and all that kind of stuff. You need to become AI enabled. So that's another one of the challenges that we talked about earlier is, wow, the people making the decisions don't know AI. Oh yeah, they know ChatGPT and they know their electronic medical record does some AI stuff, but that's not you knowing AI. It's got to transform your personal life. Then you can start. And that's why, again, we have this great product, great stuff. How come we haven't gone as far as we should, like we have in other industries like pharmaceuticals, like Victoria, you were sharing? It's because, man, some of the leaders, they are from the a generation previous, and I don't mean by age, I mean by understanding of what is the opportunity ahead of us. So it's encouragement. It's not nothing negative. It's encouragement because I need it myself. It's like dive deep, have it transform some aspect of your life. It could be your travel, whatever it is. Then it'll open your eyes, and then you'll start insisting your organization make these sort of investments.
Agreed. Janae, what's your pearl here? Share with us, Doc. Only one.
My important. So founders make a mistake of two things, and I did. And thanks to Harvey, that he corrected me. Number one, they try to do stuff that is not needed, and that was Edward's advice too. Don't do this shit. So what I'm gonna always tell you to ask your advisors, should I even do it? That is very important to me in understanding, because again, concentrating on Harvey's earlier point, ship the MVP, get it piloted, understand. Number two point that I learned through my journey and with the great advisors that you share in the screen is that understanding the implementation and support. Again, reminder that they're not just buying a product, they're buying a vendor or hopefully a partner vendor, and they want education, support, and follow through. That is such a huge important part of the sales cycle. People just think, oh, I need to get to that meeting. No, you actually have to go through the whole support system, create trust in a noisy place of AI where AI is gonna make sure that the signal is better. So again, that's my golden nugget, I suppose, what I've learned recently.
I love it. And now I'll throw one for me. I guess I'll answer my own question for now. My other favorite phrase is, let's work backwards. At the end of the day, what is my vision? What do I want to do? How do I want to see it, feel it, breathe it, see that product, and then work backwards. What do I need to do to get to that vision? And I truly think working backwards really does work. And my other, yes, thank you for pointing out. Those are my two books that he bought. Thank you for the
I love
honor of you buying it. Thank you. And then the oh God, I had another one, but I already forgot. Anyway, it's all good. Big picture, we are around. Oh, that was the other thing I want to say. I'm looking at the comments, and thank you for putting all those comments. I'll ask you guys to go in the comments and reply, because there's some really good questions, and I don't want you to think we didn't address them. But thank you so much on my part. It was an honor to have Victoria and be here with Ed and Dr. Junaid. It's truly an honor for me. So I don't have anything else unless you guys do, or Junaid.
Extremely grateful again. We should do this all over again, and then we'll invite Dr. Mannix. And I'm going to share some exciting news separately, which they are developing. Very early stage. You might be interested. But long story short, again, network. Thank you so much. I'm very grateful that you guys joined. Have a nice, see you next week.
Thank you.
And Victoria,